Sorry, wrong game. One of my dreams as a teenager was to live even for an hour in a cyberpunk dystopia. Not as a hacker or anything fancy like that, just, experience the life of your average Joe. Being under constant surveillance by corporations, buying expensive bottled water because potable water sources are not to be trusted anymore, having easy access to amazing tech and all the knowledge gathered by hundreds of generations and still sitting at the bottom of the food chain, the usual stuff. And now, in 2020, that's just Tuesday for me. Alright, I know things are not that bad, but you know who has it worse than probably all of us? The inhabitants of Nevalis, the dystopian megalopolis where Cloudpunk is set. Cloudpunk is a cyberpunk delivery sim of sorts developed by Berlin-based studio Iron Lands, who you may know for their debut title called Phoning Home. You play as Rania, an ex-musician who was forced out of her home province by the corporations she owed money to. She settles in Nevalis, a sprawling megalopolis where CEOs are de facto royalty and urban planners are court-appointed torturers who terrorize citizens by designing the infrastructure around slow elevators. Once in Nevalis, Rania starts working for Cloudpunk, an illicit delivery service to support herself and her dog. Her dog AI, who's also her car. Because, you see, he had a physical body which she had to sell along with her house to partially cover the debts owed to the corporations. Yeah, don't let the cute voxels fool you, this game is pretty dark. An absolutely beautiful dark game, if you will. This is probably one of the most authentic cyberpunk worlds I've ever seen in a video game. Cloudpunk knocks it out of the park in terms of presentation. It's a visual and auditory treat. Everything from the graphics to the art style to the sound design and soundtrack is absolutely flawless. The city of Nevalis is effectively an amalgamation of all things cyberpunk in a cohesive, deliciously looking and hauntingly sounding package. Neons flash in the dead of the night, flying cars swish by, giant advertisements tower over Nevalis' unwitting citizens who are also constantly bombarded with corporate propaganda. Anyway, you get the idea. It looks just as stunning up close. By lowering the car to street level, you'll see a myriad of bars, nightclubs, noodle stands, and tons of other products of your typical cyberpunk economic climate. The streets are packed with pedestrians, from regular people minding their own business to android gangbangers, merchants, and drug dealers. Some of these individuals will have interesting stories to tell, while others will just try to con you. The sound design in Cloudpunk is also excellent, but don't take my word for it, just listen to this.
We have a new job coming in.
From Control? He normally calls.
The checksum confirms it's Cloudpunk. I have a nav point.
Let's go then.
The city of Nevalis feels alive, or lived in, however you want to put it. You could say that the city proper is a character in and of itself, and arguably the most important one at that. It's a dark, uncaring, and unforgiving city that has been around for millennia and will still probably exist long after the events of Cloudpunk. This concept of the setting as the character, or more accurately the city that doesn't care about you as the character, ties in very neatly with the gameplay and the story of this game. As cliche as the permanently rainy world of Cloudpunk may be, this is not your run-of-the-mill cyberpunk flick. You don't assume the role of a monosyllabic hacker or a heavily augmented gangbanger, but an average person trying to survive by taking a soulless job in Nevalis' shitty gig economy. You won't be shooting your way through armies of corporate paramilitary troops or get unwittingly sucked into a maze-like corporate conspiracy. Well, not in the traditional sense anyway. As your gruff dispatcher explains, your only job is to take packages from point A to point B, never miss a delivery, and never ask questions. And this pretty much sums up the core of the gameplay. You drive. But labeling Cloudpunk as a mere delivery sim does nothing but minimize the accomplishments of this game, as well as what it's trying to get across. Granted, the gameplay is minimalistic at best, but I'll explain why this is entirely okay a bit later. Cloudpunk is split into two main parts, the driving sections and the on-foot sections. The driving component is tight and enjoyable. Holding space takes the car to higher altitudes, while holding shift does the opposite. This simple yet elegant system illustrates and nicely complements the verticality of the level design. Nevalis is a huge city with more multiple layers and levels that are as complex as its rich history and lore. Despite this, I never felt lost or confused as to where I have to go, except for maybe a couple of times. Those damn elevators, man. To access the on-foot sections, you'll have to park your car in designated spots. The floaty character movement as well as the occasionally wonky camera angles make the on-foot sections not as enjoyable as when you're smashing against walls, but there are some nice navigation puzzles and loot to collect to compensate for that. Cloudpunk has a few light simulation and management elements. You'll need to occasionally refuel your car or stop by a garage for some much needed but totally preventable repairs. You can also customize your car with various components. These components can be purely cosmetic, like this retro antenna that took me back to my childhood years when I was playing Revolt non-stop, and can also affect the speed and maneuverability of your car. Oh, and you'll also have the opportunity to trade your rusty hover car with a faster one at some point during the story. The car customization options are pretty limited. You can unlock and buy most components in the first few hours. However, it's worth mentioning that the devs are hard at work to expand it, and there's even a vehicle builder in the pipeline, so I'm looking forward to that. Apart from your car, you can invest your money in pimping out your rat-infested apartment with furniture, appliances, and presumably corporate-approved decorating pieces. Walking through the apartment is a great opportunity to admire Cloudpunk's voxel-based art style up close. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it fits the overall aesthetic of the game and blends well with the environment. You can barely notice the chunky cubes from a distance anyway, and the devs deserve credit for trying to do something unique. I've mentioned earlier that the minimalistic gameplay works to the advantage of the game instead of dragging it down. That's because Cloudpunk is a game focused almost exclusively on exploration and conversation. The gameplay in Cloudpunk is more of a storytelling and character development device than anything else. As you're traveling through the glitzy financial districts and seedy slums of Nevalis, you will meet a wide cast of characters from all walks of life. They include cops, gangsters, CEOs, car racers, sex workers, and many others. Some of these characters are just a pretext to deliver tidbits of lore and story, while others will give you various tasks. I have to mention that the quality of the writing and the voice acting is all over the place. Most of the voice acting is decent, but when it's bad you really notice it.
He left this package for you.
Where is it supposed to go?
Huh? You don't know?
No.
Well, I guess he's gonna tell you. Better hurry, Robert. Gonna be late.
Fortunately, there are a lot of great characters to make up for that. I was especially impressed by the main character, Rania. I went into this game thinking that she'll check all the boxes of a typical Cyberpunk character. I was expecting to endure 10 hours of tired cynicism, cheap wisecracks and edgy nihilism, but Rania is anything but that. She's actually a decent person who's just trying to get by in this fucked up city. I mean, sure, she rebels and goes on the occasional rant regarding the absolutely deplorable state of the world she lives in, but can you blame her? Her life fucking sucks. So yeah, Rania really is a breath of fresh air in terms of Cyberpunk characters. The writers deserve praise for this, and I hope other Cyberpunk games or even media in general will take cues from Cloudpunk when writing their characters. Another character that I absolutely have to mention is Huxley. He is a private investigator android gone haywire who talks only through film noir monologues with all the delicious cliches and metaphors we all love and cringe at.
What? Who is this?
The dame wanted a name. What did I have left to lose? Nothing but my hat. I let her know that I was Huxley, but I left off the private investigator. She'd know the deal soon enough.
So you're a private investigator and your name is Huxley.
The dame was as sharp as my ex-wife's parting words before she left me and moved back in with her mother.
But what I initially expected to be a throwaway gag character turned out to be really the catalyst of one of the most emotional moments in Cloudpunk. Huxley is really the heart and soul of the game, even more so than Rania, because his character, in my opinion, represents the personification of the city itself. Nothing is what it seems in Nevalis. And this idea that nothing is what it seems extends to the story itself and the rest of the characters you'll meet. One moment you're sneering at somebody's supposed arrogance and superficiality, and by the end of the trip you'll more often than not end up sympathizing with them. I went through this same process with Dolly, the vain pop star, and even Mrs. Butler, the elitist and self-absorbed socialite. I've seen some critics complaining that Cloudpunk's narrative lacks any sort of tension and that it doesn't use its platform to examine the usual cyberpunk specific issues like corporate control, cutthroat capitalism and the rich-poor divide. But here's the thing, it kinda does. It examines those issues not from the perspective of a corporation toppling gunslinging hacker, but a regular person who has no choice but to work hard and hope that someday they'll get a semblance of financial stability. As for the lack of narrative tension, well, I'm sorry, but as heart-pounding as shutting down rogue AIs and escaping corporate bounty hunters may be, it doesn't even compare to the prospect of not making your fucking rent. And that was my take on the socio-economic state of today. And that's the gist of Cloudpunk. It's a grounded game set in a not so grounded cyberpunk world that uses its minimalistic gameplay to tell a story about the day-to-day hardships of regular people and expand on the lore. It's short, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and I enjoyed every second of it. I'm excited to see what the devs have in store for this game in terms of additional content, because I'm sure they have many more stories to tell. Oh, and by the way, please take a moment to appreciate that I went through this review without mentioning Blade Runner. Wait, don't go yet. This is the 10th video I've posted, and 2 weeks ago I officially surpassed the 100 subscriber mark. I have to admit that back in January when I opened this channel and posted my first review, I never expected to make it this far. I'm not a big channel by any stretch of the imagination, let's make that clear. But I'm pretty satisfied with my work. And judging by the metrics, so are you, so I guess I'll keep making these videos. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for watching my videos, liking, disliking, subscribing, commenting, whatever, you get it. I'm grateful and humbled by your support, and I hope this channel will continue to grow, and even if it won't grow, fuck it, I'll still be around making videos because I love this shit. So again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you around.